Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so grateful you are here. Welcome to Whole Life Healing, where we integrate strategy, soul, and science. My name is Karla Caldwell. I am your host. I am a nurse, health coach by background, specializing in communication and health behavior change. And for the purpose of this episode, I also specialize in working towards being my best self, stumbling, figuring a few things out, trying over and over again, and sharing some of these lessons. Today, I want to share some of what I'm learning regarding something I'm working on. And that something is I am working on mental suffering, approaching it from an empowering lens, one where I become aware of which areas I'm mentally suffering in, when it's happening, and applying an intervention to stop suffering in the moment. And my ultimate goal is to make this a habit of releasing mental suffering. The mental suffering I want to focus on today are things that are within our control and our ability to stop. So I have just noticed that a lot of the suffering that occurs for me is mental. And a lot of it's a choice. I'm really choosing to suffer mentally. I'm also noticing that when I pay attention and I notice that I'm suffering mentally, I can actually stop it if I choose. There's 4 areas of mental suffering that I wanted to talk about today. These are the 4 times that I find myself suffering, and I chose these 4 not only because I go through them, but in my role as a nurse health coach. These are the 4 areas I see most often with others and their mental suffering. So for me, it feels like these are probably the top 4. If you have any other examples, I would love to hear from you. We're better together, and we can definitely add to this list if needed. So the first one I find kind of interesting. I find that happiness can cause suffering. Hear me out. Not the happiness itself, but the attachment to it. I have noticed that I tend to romanticize high points. And so what this looks like is let's say that when my child was 5 years old, that was a fantastic year. I loved that year. It was great. We got along wonderful. I thought he was fantastic at year 5. And now I am suffering because I want my son to be like when he was 5. I want our lives to be like when he was 5. I want a relationship to be like that. I'm attached. And I'm experiencing suffering because I'm not really being in the moment. I'm attached to that happy time when he was 5. I encourage you to think about your own life and think about moments that brought you a lot of happiness. And did any part of you want to stay there or start to compare other parts of your life? Like, well, it wasn't like when we went to Hawaii. I find that kind of suffering interesting, because it's interesting that we could put happiness and suffering in the same sentence. But again, it's about that attachment. And so, what I'm learning is there are two things I can do for that. One, when I catch myself thinking about why can't it be like back then, right? When I'm comparing my current moment with a happy moment in the past, and I am wanting to be there again, or I'm comparing and I start to mentally suffer, noticing that is really important. And I apply the intervention. I'm going to suggest this intervention with all four of the examples. It's always the same. It's focusing on the present moment, releasing that attachment and using the breath to come to the present moment. So, what that looks like is when I notice myself comparing and wanting something to be like it was, those are key phrasing, like, why can't he or she be like how they used to be? Why can't it be like that one time? When I notice that happening, I stop, notice, I label it like you're doing it, Karla. You're attached to a past happy moment. I choose to let it go, and I redirect my attention to my breathing so that I can come into the present moment. And what that looks like, I'm going to describe it to you. And if you're able to, I invite you to follow the guidance so that you can see what it feels like. So, coming into this present moment, I like to close my eyes if I can, if it's safe, and I bring the awareness to the breath. I'm going to pay attention to the beginning of the inhale, and I'm going to notice that transition between the end of that inhale and the beginning of the exhale. Exhaling out all the way. And then again, I'm going to notice that transition from the end of the exhale to the beginning of the inhale. And I'm going to do that a few times, just paying attention to the transition between the inhale and the exhale, and the transition from the exhale to the inhale. And I'm going to focus on that empty space between the inhale and the exhale. And I'm going to keep my attention there for a few moments. Then you stop, open the eyes, and we're in the present moment. If you find your mind going back to all of that thinking, you can start over so that you can bring your awareness to the present moment. Okay, so the suffering with happiness, I've noticed it happens in two instances. So when there's comparing, wanting something to be like it used to, like a happy moment in the past. And also, I notice it as something good is happening. So, what this looks like is being in the moment, something really wonderful is happening, and the mind switches from experiencing this wonderful moment in the present to moving towards attachment of, I don't want this to end. I don't want this to ever end. When you notice your mind starting to attach itself, you want that happy moment to last. That attachment causes mental suffering. It takes you out of the present moment. So again, you can do the same thing. Notice that it's happening. Stop. Choose to be in the present moment. the intervention is focusing on the breath. Okay? Now, sad things. This one makes more sense to me. It makes sense to mentally suffer when something sad, bad, or challenging is happening. But again, I've also noticed that the suffering is happening because we're leaving the present moment and we're attaching meaning to what this challenging thing means, to what this sad thing is. We're starting to wonder, how long is this going to last? Maybe we start comparing to a different time we went through this. Notice how it's similar. You're leaving the present moment. You are wondering, worrying, getting anxious about how long this is going to last. You want it to end, and you're mentally suffering because of the thoughts you're having and because you're out of the present moment. It's not even the sad or challenging thing anymore. It's all of that thinking. So the same thing, the same intervention. Notice when you are mentally suffering because something sad, challenging, or bad is happening. When you notice that your mind is starting to loop and attach meaning, you can just notice, okay, I'm doing it. Let's get back to the present moment. And you're going to do that same intervention. If it's safe for you to close your eyes, if it's not, you can keep your eyes open. But if it's safe, you close your eyes. You bring the awareness to the breath. And for a few cycles, you're going to pay attention to the beginning of the inhale. And then you're going to notice the transition between that end of the inhale and the beginning of the exhale. Exhaling out, paying attention to the end of the exhale and the transition to the inhale. It takes all of our awareness to really pay attention to that transition. That's why I'm naming that. You do it for a few times and then you focus on the empty space. What does the empty space feel like between those transitions of inhale and exhale? And when you feel yourself coming back to the present moment, you can open your eyes, you can move on. I will say that this is not like taking a pill. It's not like taking ibuprofen and like within 30 minutes your headache goes away. And then it stays away for a specified amount of time until it comes back the next time. Sometimes the mental suffering can come back right away. Your mind might be stubborn that day and it's like, nope, we're going to go back to the suffering. And it might take several cycles of focusing on your breathing. And the more you practice, the longer the space between you and your mental suffering. But this is a practice. This is a life practice. And I think it's important to understand that this is normal, that our human nature and brain is equipped this way it's become a habit to attach meaning. It's become a habit to leave the present moment. So it's going to take a lot of practice to get better at this. Okay, third thing that causes mental suffering: comparison. Oh my gosh, comparison of any kind, comparison of people, comparison of yourself from the past, the present, or projecting into the future, comparison of situations, of interactions. Comparison can often cause mental suffering. Again, when you notice yourself mentally suffering because of comparison, you label it, okay, I'm mentally suffering because I'm comparing, and you come to the breath. I'm going to describe it one more time. Closing the eyes if it's safe. focusing on the breath, noticing the inhale, noticing which parts of your body you feel that inhale, and focusing on the end of the inhale and the transition to the exhale. And just really being present with that exhale and noticing the transition from the end of the exhale to the beginning of the inhale. Doing that for a few cycles to calm the mind, bring it back to the present moment, and then focusing on the space between the inhale and the exhale, the space between each of the transitions. And just doing this until you feel yourself calming down and coming back into the present moment. The fourth example of where I notice the most mental suffering is when we fixate mentally on something that we can't even control. So when we notice ourselves suffering because of bad news or politics or rules that you can't change or other people, focusing on other people's actions and wanting them to be different. Anytime we start to ruminate on something we can't control, wanting it to be different, that can cause mental suffering. Again, noticing that it's happening, labeling it, saying, I can't control this. I choose to focus on the present moment. I release this mental suffering, and then applying your intervention of focusing on the breath. I will be working on this for the rest of my life. I do notice that the more I'm practicing, the more I'm becoming aware when I'm doing it, the more I'm feeling empowered and owning my mind and my life instead of just following the whim of the mind, attaching mentally to things that are causing mental suffering. I feel empowered in this practice of noticing, letting go, and using my breathing to come back to the present moment. I invite you to try this. Try it. Take it on a test drive for a week. Set the intention that every time you notice yourself mentally suffering, make the choice to let it go. Make the choice to come to the present moment and choose to focus on your breathing until you feel like you are in the present moment. I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear from you. Let me know if you take this out on a test drive, or if you decide, if you're already working on this, if you decide to do it even more. Let me know how it goes. I'm rooting for your success times 1,000. Please share this with your network. Help me to reach more people, especially if you found this helpful. Have a great day. Thank you.